They barely looked up when he entered. One CEO nudged the man beside him. "Who let the help in?" Another chuckled, arms crossed. "Is this a costume party or what?" He said nothing. No badge, no introduction, just a sheet of paper placed silently on the polished table. The laughter echoed. "You think walking in here in boots and a beret scares us?" sneered the man in the center. They had no idea who they were talking to, or what was about to happen next. Don't blink. Power is shifting. The room reeked of money and arrogance. 5 Western executives, seated in sleek leather chairs, gazed out at the Ouagadougou skyline. The sun dipped low, gilding the towers in gold. Behind them, satellite images flickered across a giant screen, maps of lithium fields, gold veins, bauxite quarries, all labeled, all claimed. "They don't even know what they're sitting on," one said, swirling whiskey. "To them, it's red dirt. To us, billions." The youngest tapped his pen. "Let's secure the 20-year lease. Up extraction by 15%. They'll beg for the foreign currency." A knock. No one answered. The door creaked open. A man stepped in. Camouflage fatigues, blood-red beret, dusty boots, gloved hands, quiet authority. "Can we help you?" one executive mocked. The man walked slowly to the head of the table, placed a single page down, looked each man in the eye. "Effective immediately, all 5 of your operating licenses are revoked." Silence, then laughter. "Excuse me," said the CEO at the center. "Who do you think you are?" He didn't flinch. "Ask your embassy." Then he turned and walked out. The youngest leapt to his feet. "You think that uniform gives you authority? We have contracts." But he was already gone. Moments later, encrypted tablets buzzed, then buzzed again. One by one, their access vanished. National grid, customs approvals, mining permits, gone. "What the hell is going on?" The head of legal grabbed the paper. It was real, signed, sealed, backed by constitutional authority. "This is a coup," one whispered. "No," another said, trembling. "This is payback." Footsteps faded. Thunder cracked in the distance. Back in the elevator, Traoré didn't speak. He didn't have to. The storm was already coming, and it was his. Outside, journalists gathered. Word had leaked. Burkina Faso wasn't for sale. A few floors below, in a dim operations room, Aminata clicked send. She hadn't slept in 4 days. The final audit, hundreds of pages, decades of corruption, was now public record. Traoré entered, nodded once. "You did well." She said, "They'll fight back." He rolled up his sleeves, then let them. He sat beside her, opened a fresh folder. Phase 2, Land Reclamation. From this moment on, nothing would be the same, and no one would ever laugh in that room again. 6 months earlier, the village was choking on dust, the wells nearly dry. Inside a cracked mud hut, elders sat in silence, eyes tired, hands worn, voices full of stories. Across from them sat a stranger. No title, no medals, just fatigues, a sun-faded red beret, and quiet presence. He listened. No speeches, no slogans, just a notebook in his lap. The oldest elder placed a trembling hand on it. "They said we'd be partners, but we only got sickness and graves." The man nodded. "You'll own your land again." They didn't need to know how. They already knew who he was. That night, under a flickering bulb, he pored over mining contracts, some older than the Republic, colonial ink, modern fraud, foreign bank stamps. He circled names in red, companies, shell accounts, missing royalties. Nothing had ever reached the people. A knock. His security chief entered. "They're watching you." "I know. If you keep digging, they'll come after you." He stood, walked to the window. Fires glowed across the village. "We don't fight with bullets," he said. "We fight with proof." At dawn, he carried water with an old woman, sat with schoolchildren, walked the hills in crumbled soil in his hands. They didn't treat him like a guest. They treated him like hope. Back in the capital, he handed the evidence to Aminata. "You found this in a week?" "No," he said. "It's been here for decades. We just never looked where it hurt." In the shadows, his network moved fast. Drones filmed remote mines. Lawyers drafted emergency doctrines. Whistleblowers came forward. One brought a flash drive. "This will either save your country or destroy me." Inside, export records, forged invoices, stolen minerals disguised as aid. "Start the audits," Traoré ordered. "Every contract, every gram." In a white-walled office across town, Aminata pointed to a list of names. "These three, start here. Profits in Europe, losses on paper here. Their renewals are next quarter." Her legal team fanned out, young, fearless, focused. Then came the storm, not with tanks, not with guns, but with facts. Contracts voided, operations frozen, land reclaimed. And the world watched as Burkina Faso stood up and said, "No more." They weren't career diplomats. They weren't corporate lawyers or polished negotiators. They were the children of villages that had been robbed. One had grown up next to a river that once ran clear, now choked with tailings and dead fish. Another hadn't seen her grandfather smile since the day his farmland was sold without his name on the paper. In the dim legal office, Aminata circled a clause in red. "This isn't a legal exercise. It's recovery. It's repair." By midnight, they had followed paper trails across 6 countries. One foreign firm had declared $3 billion in overseas revenue, but only $2 million locally. And the nearest clinic was a half-collapsed hut with no medicine. "We're not chasing justice," Aminata said as she clicked send. "We're enforcing it." Moments later, Traoré received the file. He scanned the pages, then stopped at the photo of the poisoned river. A faint smile broke across his face. Across town, cease and desist orders began printing. Quietly, surgically, the ground beneath the foreign corporations began to crack. The people hadn't felt it yet, but they would. The legal team had spent weeks trapped in legalese. Contracts fortified with international protections. Language so dense, it felt like trying to catch smoke. Then, one night, Aminata froze. Her eyes caught an overlooked sentence buried deep in a decades-old mining lease. "Any proven violation of national environmental law shall result in immediate and irreversible revocation of rights." She blinked. It wasn't in the newer contracts. They had quietly removed it. But this clause was still active, and the company still operated under it. She called her team back in, groggy, barefoot, but alert. "This is it," she whispered. "We don't need to prove intent. We just need to prove damage." The room lit up. Photos of tailings ponds leaking into farmland? Now legal evidence. Testimonies from villagers about dead goats and rashes, now admissible. Drone footage once dismissed as activist noise, now the foundation of the case. Aminata placed one photo on the cover of the final report. A river, black with sludge, dead fish on the banks, children staring, barefoot. The title, Violations of Environmental Law, Grounds for Revocation. The next morning, they walked into the presidential strategy room. Traoré stood before a massive map. Mineral regions, foreign-owned, neatly divided. Aminata said nothing, just handed him the file. He flipped through the pages. No speeches, no emotion, just law. Solid, binding, undeniable. He paused at the photo. "Are you sure this holds?" Aminata nodded. "Their license is only valid if they follow the law, and they haven't." Around the room, most nodded in agreement. But one general spoke up. "If we move now, the West will retaliate. Sanctions, pressure. Are we ready?" Traoré didn't flinch. "Let them." Then he picked up a red marker and began drawing X's across the company zones. Each one a broken promise, a stolen future. He said, "Prepare the notices. They don't own this land. Not anymore." Within 48 hours, cease and desist orders were hand-delivered, language precise and cold. "This notice terminates your exploitation license under national law." Some companies refused to accept, others made calls. A few offered hush money. All were denied. International media caught wind. Burkina Faso takes on mining giants. Stock prices dipped. Boardrooms panicked. But back in the village with the poisoned river, cleanup crews had arrived. Children were told for the first time in years they could touch the water again. Aminata sat at her desk, watching the news tick by. Her phone buzzed with threats, congratulations, and press requests. Then a handwritten note slid under the door, from a village teacher. "My students will finally know what clean water tastes like. Thank you." She held the note in her hand, whispered to herself, "They underestimated the law. That was their mistake." Across the capital, foreign governments demanded answers. Trade attachés, legal threats, letters bearing embassy seals. Inside the main strategy room, Traoré read one aloud. "This country was on its knees long before they arrived. Now they threaten to knock us lower." Silence, until Aminata broke it. "They're trying to scare us before the people realize their power." Traoré nodded, then let the people speak. The next morning he ordered a national forum, open, televised, translated in real time. Not held in court, but beneath the baobab trees in the old capital. The flag flew overhead, and the people came. One by one they stood, a miner coughing dust from his lungs. 3 months of work, still can't afford medicine. A widow holding a torn photo. He went down into that tunnel and never came back. They knew it was unsafe. A child barefoot holding a jug of yellow water. "This was our river. Now it gives us sores." He pointed to the scar on his leg. The world watched. Hashtag Let the People Speak began to trend. Across the ocean, they didn't fear lawsuits anymore, they feared the example. Influencers, activists, even skeptical economists were starting to pay attention. In a Paris boardroom, a mining CEO slammed his laptop shut. "This isn't a legal process, it's theater." His counsel didn't blink. "Worse than theater, it's truth, and they're letting the world watch it live." Back in Ouagadougou, the press compound expanded by the hour. BBC, Al Jazeera, Reuters, cameras arrived from every continent. Each evening, President Traoré stepped up to the podium. No flourishes, no sound bites, just one line: "Let the world watch." Testimonies poured in. Farmers held up photographs of soil so poisoned it wouldn't grow cassava.
Teachers told of children fainting mid-lesson from hunger, while gold convoys rumbled past their villages. A priest read a letter from a dying woman. "I thought God had abandoned us until the mining trucks stopped." Aminata compiled it all: eyewitness accounts, GPS data, images, contracts, hundreds of pages. Footnoted, time-stamped, cross-referenced. On the cover she wrote, "This is the law, backed by lives."
A delegation of foreign legal observers arrived. They expected chaos. They found clarity. A German delegate whispered to his colleague, "This isn't rebellion, it's repair." Behind closed doors, economic advisors pleaded with Traoré, "Slow down, you're risking investment, aid, foreign stability." He cut them off. What stability, when half our country was hungry and the other half poisoned? The final hearing shook the nation. A young woman held up a dusty ledger, stolen from a mining office. It documented contamination reports and orders to bury them. They knew, they lied, and they profited. The crowd erupted. That night, Traoré walked through the empty square. No security, no entourage. An old man under the baobab tree looked up and said, "We screamed for decades. Thank you for hearing us." Traoré sat beside him in the dirt, because justice here didn't wear robes. It walked barefoot. It bled. And now it had a voice. By sunrise, the world woke up. Burkina Faso canceled $11 billion in mining contracts, blazed across screens. CNN, Al Jazeera, BBC, France 24. Markets stumbled. Phones rang in Zurich, Toronto, Brussels. In a Brussels boardroom, a mining executive yelled, "They can't do this, we have protections." Another muttered, "We lost 20% of our market cap overnight." Someone pulled up footage of the hearings under the baobab trees. Miners, widows, children. No spin, no filters, just truth. The silence in the boardroom grew louder than any alarm. Across Africa, the ripple spread. In Ghana, young lawyers watched. In Mali, farmers whispered. In Niger, teachers leaned in to listen. Maybe we can do this too. But nowhere was the silence deeper than in the villages of Burkina Faso. The noise was gone. No trucks, no drills, no corporate banners. For the first time in memory, there was stillness. Children peeked through tall grass, watching workers pack equipment into crates. An old woman approached the gate of a once feared mine. Is it true? Are they really gone? They were. In Ouagadougou, the markets exploded with joy. "He did it!" someone shouted. "They're leaving!" cried another. Strangers hugged. Eyes glistened. They didn't own stocks, they didn't hold shares. But for the first time in memory, they felt like they owned their country. In a packed press room, journalists swarmed Traoré. One French reporter stepped forward. "Do you understand what this means for your economy?" He paused. "It means we're the ones counting." Flashbulbs fired. The world listened. In Paris, emergency meetings. "If we let this stand," said a finance minister, "others will follow. Pressure them, diplomatically, financially, legally." One diplomat whispered, "Too late. The world's already watching." In Washington, a white paper circulated, Burkina Faso Containment Strategy. Use banks, use trade, use influence. One diplomat whispered, "Too late. The world's already watching." In Ouagadougou, Aminata's office had become a war room. Dozens of mining companies filed desperate appeals. They offered rural clinics, scholarship funds, reforestation plans. She denied them all. "You had 20 years. You spent it hiding profits. Don't ask for one more minute." Outside her office, she posted images of the poisoned rivers, not for evidence, for memory.
a Brazilian journalist aired a segment titled, "The Day the Truck Stopped." She interviewed farmers reclaiming land, doctors reopening clinics, children who walked miles just to see the fence of a shuttered mine. She said, "This isn't anti-business, it's anti-theft." One boy held up a handmade sign, "We are not dirt, we are dignity." It went viral. Retaliation came fast. Banks delayed transfers, aid was reviewed, NGOs were pressured, embassies issued veiled warnings of instability. Traoré didn't blink.
In his office, he reviewed a report. Several offshore state accounts, frozen. "They'll tighten the screws," warned his economic advisor. "Investment bans may be next." Traoré nodded. "Let them tighten. We'll grow from the roots, not the leash." That night, he met with rural mayors. "If the world wants to see a nation that stands tall without foreign chains," he said, "let them see it here." One mayor replied, "We had the land, we had the people, we just needed someone to say enough." Traoré smiled, "Then say it louder." Bonfires lit up across villages. Radios, phones, loudspeakers carried the message into the hills. Children listened, eye-wide. Elders wept. In the capital, a mural appeared on an abandoned corporate building. A man in a red beret standing over broken chains, holding a map of Burkina Faso, made of gold but rooted in soil. Above it, 5 words, "This time we are counting." In the desert, 12 trucks rumbled toward the border under moonlight, unmarked, sealed. Inside, unrefined gold, barrels of lithium, the last spoils moving before the new laws fully kicked in. But at a remote checkpoint, a single soldier stood. Karim, 23, wide-eyed, boots too big. He had read the revocation orders 10 times that day. He had watched the hearings. He believed. Now diesel engines growled, headlights approached. The truck slowed. His heart pounded. Belief was no longer enough, but it was all he had. Karim stepped forward, rifle slung, but not untouched. He raised one hand. "Stop. This cargo requires state clearance." The lead driver cracked his window just enough to talk. "We've got federal authorization." Karim shook his head. His heart was thudding. Not anymore. Those licenses were revoked. The driver scoffed. "Son, move the barrier." Karim glanced at the papers in his hand, voice unsteady but firm. "This cargo belongs to the state now. You need to turn around." Engines idled behind the first truck. Shadows shifted in the dark. The convoy hadn't expected resistance here. This route had always been cleared with quiet bribes and old permits. But someone forgot to remove the smallest cog from the machine. His radio hissed, then crackled. A voice barked through, "Checkpoint 42, what's the holdup?" Karim keyed the mic. "Unauthorized convoy, 12 trucks, requesting revocation enforcement confirmation." A pause. The trucks rumbled impatiently. The driver leaned out again. "You're making a mistake. You think this gets you a medal? You'll lose your post for this." Karim didn't blink, even as sweat dripped down his temple. Then a new voice came through the radio, calm, deep, unmistakable. "Karim, this is Traoré." He straightened. "Sir? You did the right thing. That shipment does not leave this land. Stand firm, soldier. We're behind you." Karim lowered the radio, jaw set. "This checkpoint is closed. You are in violation of state orders. Turn your vehicles around." The driver laughed nervously. "You think you can stop us?" Karim didn't answer. He raised a flare gun and fired into the sky. Within seconds, faint lights flickered on the hills behind him, reserve units. Shadows of soldiers emerged, weapons ready but lowered. Backup had arrived. One truck door opened.
A man in a suit stepped out, not a driver, but someone higher up. "This is corporate property. Do you have any idea the trouble you're bringing on yourself?" Karim stared him down. "This isn't your land, and that's not your gold. Turn around." The man opened his mouth to argue, but nothing came out. The moment had become too real. The first engine cut, then the second. One by one, the convoy shut down. By sunrise, all 12 trucks were impounded, the cargo documented, sealed, and transferred to national custody. A photo captured the moment. Karim standing beside the lead truck, gripping the revoked license in his hand. The headline read, "One soldier, 12 trucks, a nation behind him." Karim returned to his post just before dawn. He took off his helmet and sat on the steps, breathing out the tension of the night. A local shepherd passed by and offered him a piece of dried fruit. "My father said the mines would never stop. Now I believe they will." Karim smiled faintly. "So do I." And as the sun rose over the borderlands, for the first time in decades, the gold stayed in Burkina Faso. Just after sunrise, a private jet landed at Ouagadougou's airport. Its engines had barely cooled when a convoy of black SUVs tore down the tarmac, bound for the capital. Inside the lead vehicle sat Edward Lansing, CEO of Virex Minerals, one of the largest mining conglomerates in West Africa, or rather, formerly. His legal team had begged him not to come. His board threatened to oust him, but Lansing wasn't used to hearing no. He believed everything could be bought if the price was right. He requested a private meeting with President Traoré through diplomatic channels. The office declined twice. On the third attempt, they agreed. No translators, no staff, no cameras.
Traoré met him in a bare room, wooden table, 2 chairs, and a loud ticking clock. Lansing entered with a politician's smile and an envelope tucked into his coat. He offered his hand. Traoré nodded but didn't shake it. "Thank you for meeting me," Lansing began smoothly. "I know tensions are high, but we can resolve this without unnecessary drama." Traoré said nothing. Lansing pressed on. "You're under pressure. Internal politics, media optics, national pride. But this can go away." He slid a check across the table. "Good faith," he added. "There's more. Partnership offers, community programs, clinics, water pumps. We'll brand everything, of course." Silence. Lansing leaned in. "Mr. President, this decision, this wave you're making, it'll crash your economy. Your banks, your markets, they're already bleeding." Traoré leaned forward. "Do you remember the name of the village where you dug your first pit?" Lansing blinked. "It was Southeastern Region, I think. The name, does it matter?" Traoré slid the check back toward him. "That's the difference. You remember the profits. I remember the people." Lansing's charm cracked. "You think this is about money?" "You do," Traoré said. Lansing stood sharply. "You're throwing away everything. Investment, infrastructure, development." Traoré stood too. "No, I'm reclaiming what was always ours. You built nothing we asked for. You profited from suffering and called it partnership." Lansing spat. "See you in court." "And the world will see you there," Traoré said. Lansing stormed out. His convoy sped away, the weight of the door he'd just closed still hanging in the air. Back inside, Traoré stood by the window. His advisor entered quietly. He left empty-handed. Traoré nodded. "Let him tell the others. Their time is over." That night, a journalist leaked a detail of the meeting. Traoré had declined a multi-million-dollar check. The internet erupted. Memes flooded timelines. One showed Traoré burning money, holding the country like a shield. But for the people, it wasn't a meme. It was the moment someone finally said no. In the same village Lansing couldn't name, a teacher read the headline aloud to her students. One boy raised his hand. "Madam, does that mean they won't take our gold anymore?" She smiled. "It means they have to ask permission, and this time we get to say no." Miles away, Traoré opened a new file. The title, Next Phase, National Land Audit, because rejecting the bribe was only the beginning. The final name was called, the deciding vote. A veteran delegate, once complicit in signing contracts that gave away land near his birthplace, stood slowly. He glanced around the chamber, then down at the desk before him, its wood worn and stained from years of decisions. His fingers hovered, remembering the guilt they once carried. Yes! The word echoed. Silence followed. No cheers, no applause, just the slow collective understanding of what had just changed. Outside, the city erupted. Crowds that had gathered since dawn broke into song. Drums beat wildly, chants rose into the hot air. Young men hoisted grandmothers onto their shoulders. Children danced barefoot through the dust. Church bells rang. The call to prayer echoed from mosques. Flags unfurled from rooftops. Motorbikes zipped through streets, their riders shouting, "It passed! It passed!" On national television, the moment was replayed over and over. Inside the chamber, Aminata stood motionless. Her eyes glistened, but she didn't blink them away. The speaker approached quietly. "You didn't just write a bill, you rewrote our future." She gave a single nod, then walked out into the sunlight. At the steps of Parliament, reporters swarmed. She raised her hand. "No statements today. This belongs to the people." Across town, President Traoré watched from his office. He didn't smile. He didn't speak. He walked slowly to the window, looking out over the celebrating capital, not waiting to be applauded, but watching a people who, for the first time in generations, owned the soil beneath them, not in principle, but in law. And this time, the law spoke with their voice. Behind closed doors at the French embassy, the mood had curdled from diplomatic to desperate. The ambassador, arms crossed, stood at the window watching the jubilant streets. "If we lose our footing here," he muttered, "others will follow." Inside, analysts laid out risk reports, satellite images, investment briefings. "This vote changes everything," said one. "The resource nationalization model could spread." A British diplomat nodded. "Mali's watching. Ghana, too. If it ripples, we could lose half the region." From Washington to Brussels, cables flew. Internal memos carried phrases like economic deterrence, trade leverage, and soft pressure via global lenders. But one line stood out: reverse course or face economic isolation. The warning arrived in Ouagadougou, coded in formal diplomatic language, polite on the surface, heavy with colonial legacy underneath. Traoré read the message once during his morning briefing. He folded it, placed it on the edge of the table, and said nothing. "Should we prepare a formal response?" asked an aide. "No," Traoré said. Instead of attending his scheduled economic committee meeting, he requested a visit to a small rural commune outside the capital. No press, no cameras, just a dirt road, dry fields, and eyes full of cautious hope. Farmers had been waiting since dawn, not with placards or fanfare, but with cracked heels and calloused hands. They offered him a bowl of roasted peanuts and a wooden stool beneath a mango tree. One elder asked, They say the world might cut us off. Will we go hungry again? Traoré met his gaze. Let them isolate us. I've been alone before. We survived. A younger man added, no aid, no banks, no markets. Then what? Traoré replied, then we build. Not fast, not perfect, but ours. Silence fell, not from fear but from understanding. The earth beneath them, long exploited, now felt like something to rebuild, not just till. An old woman stepped forward with a bowl of millet, her hands trembling. We planted when no one believed we'd harvest. We buried children when the mines poisoned our well. If we survived that, now we thrive. Traoré took the bowl in both hands. Then now we thrive. Back in the capital, embassy walls grew tense. France had issued an informal ultimatum. The World Bank revised Burkina Faso's investment risk. Aid packages were reviewed. Deals were frozen. But in the streets, fear didn't take root. Community radio stations remixed folk songs with the phrase, "We've been alone before." Graffiti murals bloomed. Farmers, teachers, children sowing seeds in red soil. Slogans scrawled boldly, "No loan feeds us like our own harvest." Inside the Ministry of Agriculture, plans moved quickly, scaling up seed banks, expanding solar-powered irrigation, creating village grain co-ops. No frills, no foreign debt, just food. Aminata met with village councils across the country. If we own the land, she said, we must also feed it, and let it feed us. Some ministers panicked. Investors are fleeing. Traoré remained calm. We're not trying to win investor confidence. We're rebuilding our own. That night, a foreign journalist caught him exiting a late meeting. Mr. President, can your country survive this pressure? He didn't stop walking. We're not surviving anymore. We're choosing. And for the first time, the people believed him. Far from the capital, the road to Kulpalogo wound through thorny brush and neglected hills. At its end, a village weary of lies, hardened by drought, and buried in broken promises. Under the wide limbs of a shea tree, elders gathered in silence until the hum of 3 polished SUVs broke the stillness. Suits stepped out, briefcases clicked open, charts, maps, and smiling offers followed. We're a new consortium, private equity, clean extraction, full profit sharing. Bala, a quiet elder, squinted at a folder. What's this part? Remediation? The man replied, modern, zero footprint. Another elder leaned forward. You say jobs. We've heard that before. New model, new partners, trust us. Wrong phrase. From the back, Kudugu stood, scarred, steady. I was here when the first promises came. They brought coins, took signatures we couldn't read, left poison in our wells. He pointed at the briefcases. You came with gifts, we came with memory. We don't sell our future anymore. The suits left quietly, but the silence they left behind was full of something new. Dignity. That evening, the elders voted to form a cooperative, not for profit, but for purpose. Their first act, convert the abandoned mine into a regional training center. They named it Zamstaba, We Rise Again. Children gathered the next morning with sticks, drawing new maps in the sand, not of gold veins, but of classrooms, wells, a soccer field, and a solar station. A week later, a dusty pickup truck rolled into town. Aminata stepped out, folders in hand. They came again, she said. Kudugu nodded. We didn't fall this time. She handed him a stamped certificate. This land is yours now, legally, fully. He held the paper like a second chance.
She knelt beside a girl drawing a round building with big windows. "What's this?" she asked. "A place where we learn not to be tricked," the girl replied. Aminata smiled. "That's the law we fought for." That night, as the elders sat by the fire telling stories, of mistakes, yes, but also of resistance, the wind carried something new through the trees. Not conquest, not contracts, just the whisper of land remembered as home. Soleil Mine was only 15 when he stepped into that decaying office on a dare. His friends stayed behind, taunting him with talk of ghosts. But it wasn't phantoms that lingered inside. It was something heavier, the residue of memory, the kind that clings even when you don't fully understand it. He passed a shattered printer, stepped over a rusted, "Authorized personnel only" sign, and entered the back room. The air smelled of wet wood and dried sweat. Behind a toppled bookshelf, something caught his eye. A crumpled folder wrapped in a brittle plastic sleeve. He tugged it free. Inside, a single sheet of yellowed paper, handwritten in smudged French. The ink had bled with time, pencil notes in the margins barely legible. But the signature froze him. It was his grandfather's name. Soleil had only known his grandfather through whispers and family tales, a man who once dared to protest the mine that swallowed their land. Arrested, never charged, released years later, silent, haunted. He ran home clutching the letter. That night, his mother read it aloud. "To whoever finds this, I leave my words because I could not leave a voice. I stood once, and they buried the truth beneath cement and silence. But I believe one day someone will stand where I could not." She looked up, tears tracing lines down her cheeks. "Where did you find this?" Soleil said. "The mining office. It was just there." By morning, the letter had made its way to the village schoolteacher, from there to a regional historian, then to the Ministry of Culture. Within 3 days, it arrived at the president's desk. Traoré sat alone in the early light, the fragile paper glowing beneath his desk lamp. He read it once, then again, and again. He said nothing, just circled the date and called a national address. The next night, every radio across the country went still. Television stations cut to a single feed. In villages, crowds gathered around loudspeakers tied to trees. Cafes dimmed lights. Even the border towns held still. No anthem, no introduction. Just Traoré, at a wooden desk, the letter before him. "This," he said, holding it up, "was written by a man with no statue, no title, and no justice. But his words survived, and tonight I read them aloud for the first time." His voice echoed through kitchens and fields, dusty classrooms and busy markets. When he reached the final line, his voice cracked. "I believe one day someone will stand where I could not." He looked up, straight into the camera.
You were right. We are standing now. This land has known silence. It has known theft, but it remembers. From now on, every voice matters. No protester is forgotten. No story is erased. No sacrifice is wasted. The country held its breath, and then it exhaled. The letter was reprinted in morning papers, shared in classrooms, whispered in mosques, recited in churches. Children scribbled their names beside the phrase, "I will stand." And on the old office door where it was found, someone painted a new sign, "Truth lives here." Part 14. The Blackout. At first, it felt like a glitch. Emails bounced, card readers stalled, phones failed to process payments. By the weekend, reality set in. Banks froze international transfers, ATMs failed, clinics rationed electricity, neighborhoods blinked into darkness. The Ministry of Energy confirmed the truth. Foreign energy contracts had been quietly terminated. European servers, platforms, cloud systems, all gone. Burkina Faso had been cut off. In Brussels, they called it strategic containment. In Washington, economic enforcement. But at home, people knew what it was: retaliation. In the presidential crisis room, maps covered the walls. Advisors argued. Some called for apologies, others begged for quiet diplomacy. "This is economic warfare," one minister said. Traoré listened, then spoke. "They want us on our knees. Instead, we will stand taller." That night he spoke by candlelight. "This blackout is not accident. It is punishment. But punishment only works if we feel guilt, and we feel none for reclaiming what is ours. They thought we cut our power. They only showed us where we gave it away." He announced Operation Sankara. Phase 1, emergency solar for schools, clinics, and wells. Phase 2, food subsidies for local farmers, grain routed to inner markets. Phase 3, barter deals with Mali, Guinea, Niger. No cash, just solidarity. In 10 days, a maternity ward in Kudugu lit up with solar. 3 babies were delivered under full lights. A nurse cried, washing her hands in clean, warm water. Students built mobile solar rigs. Engineers created open-source software. Vendors slashed prices. Mosques opened kitchens. Churches shared wells. Aminata rode motorcycle across provinces. In one village, children pointed at their rooftop panels. "We made the sun ours," one girl beamed. "Yes," Aminata said, "you did." 3 weeks in, the first district glowed, entirely powered by Burkina Bay energy. We didn't fix the power. We reclaimed it. The people clapped, not for the lights, but for themselves. And in the mining village where the letter had been found, Soule helped wire solar lamps to the old building. Above the door, a handmade sign. Power is not given, it is built. Part 15. The Trial. The courtroom in The Hague gleamed. Glass, steel, cameras. Justice dressed as theater. But Burkina Faso was no longer an understudy. 5 Western mining giants sued for $18 billion, citing expropriation, a number double the national budget. Aminata arrived alone, no entourage, just a gray suit and a folder. The CEOs came like kings. One, Edward Lansing, smirked. He believed he had already won. The trial began. The foreign lawyers spoke first. They played videos of machinery, graphs of lost investment. They abandoned our contracts overnight. This is theft. Then Aminata stood. She opened her folder. What followed was surgical. Environmental reports, poisoned rivers, cancer clusters, financial records, fake invoices, hidden exports, $5 billion funneled offshore. Testimonies, a mother who lost her son to a collapsed shaft. Audio of a manager ordering unsafe work, photos of empty promises, schools never built. Then she played a single clip, Traoré's blackout speech. "They want us to fall to our knees. Instead, we will stand taller." A CEO scoffed. "This is politics." "No," Aminata said. "This is justice." The courtroom fell silent. And for the first time in that place, silence belonged not to power, but to truth. The judge leaned forward. "Proceed, counselor." Aminata rose and held up a single page, the original clause in the mining contracts. It was clear, unambiguous, still legally binding. It stated that any proven violation of national law could result in the immediate revocation of mining licenses. "Your Honors," she said,
her voice calm but resolute. "We did not break the law. We enforced it to protect the dignity, health, and future of our people." The room froze. The judges retired to deliberate. Hours passed. Outside, activists held signs aloft. Inside, executives whispered among themselves. Aminata sat still, eyes closed, hands folded in her lap. Then the judges returned. The lead judge stood. "After thorough review of the evidence, this tribunal finds that the Republic of Burkina Faso acted within its sovereign rights. The claimant's contracts were lawfully terminated based on substantiated legal violations. The request for damages is denied." Silence. Then a slow, building wave of applause. Delegates from across Africa stood. Journalists clapped. Even a court clerk from Namibia wiped away a tear. The headlines broke instantly. Burkina Faso wins landmark resource sovereignty case. Back home, in dusty villages far from The Hague, people who had never heard of international courts danced. Radios crackled with the news. Children ran through the streets waving hand-drawn flags. In the capital, Traoré met Aminata at the Ministry of Justice. "You didn't just win a case, you rewrote the rules." She nodded. And for the first time, justice wasn't delivered by a gun or a foreign grant. It came from truth. The final session of constitutional reform had arrived. The room was full. Judges in ceremonial robes, rural elders, union leaders, teachers, and students. No one spoke.
He stepped back. A boy named Ibrahima, just 11 years old, stepped forward. Barefoot, dressed in a worn t-shirt and a string of beads, he held a rolled-up sheet of paper against his chest like it was something sacred. He approached the CEO and with both hands placed it gently on the table. Everyone leaned in. It was a map, but not the kind found in Lansing's folders. This one was hand-drawn in colored pencil and charcoal. It didn't chart mineral veins or pipelines. It depicted dreams, a school rising from the mouth of a collapsed tunnel, a football field where excavation had once been planned, a hospital, a radio station, a regrown forest. Ibrahima pointed to the corner. "That's my house," he said softly, "and this is where I want to build a library." Lansing looked down at the map for a long moment. "This is the better map," he finally said, and he meant it. That map would later be framed and hung inside the Ministry of Youth. Beneath it, a plaque read, "Burkina Faso, redrawn by its children." Across the country, change quietly took root. In the north, local engineers built a water filtration system inspired by ancient well designs and powered by solar energy. In the west, women launched a textile cooperative using cotton grown on reclaimed land. In the south, schools introduced a new curriculum blending entrepreneurship and environmental ethics, all taught in native languages. And everywhere, from the capital's markets to remote village boardrooms, a new phrase echoed: "Nothing for us without us." One day, President Traoré made an unannounced visit to a joint solar project, a collaboration between local technicians and a Scandinavian firm. The plant now powered 4 villages and trained young apprentices. Each month, the founder invited Traoré for a tour. He rarely spoke, but this time, as he was leaving, something caught his eye. A mural had been painted on the outer wall of the plant. A tree bursting through cracked rock, roots entwined with machines, branches stretching toward homes and fields. A worker handed him a brush. Traoré dipped it once and painted a single red line across the tree's base. It wasn't a signature. It was a reminder that this land, this rebuilding, didn't come from a courtroom win or a clever law. It came from people deciding that maps must show not just what's valuable, but who belongs. And now, the new maps did. The sun lowered over Ouagadougou, gilding the skyline in amber light. The streets pulsed with life. Vendors closing shop, children playing, radio singing a mix of hope and memory. Inside one building, behind iron gates and flowering acacia trees, the air was calm but purposeful. It was the same boardroom where 5 4M executives had once sneered over satellite maps, where a check had been slid across the table in arrogance. But the room had changed, not in furniture, but in spirit. Gone were the leather chairs. In their place, sturdy wood. Around the table sat no shareholders from overseas, but farmers, teachers, engineers, and elders. The plaque above the door read, People's Development Cooperative, National Council Meeting Room. At the head sat a young woman who had helped build the country's first locally owned solar grid. Beside her, a grandmother who ran a rice cooperative. Across from them, a teen programmer who had designed the nation's new public health app. They weren't politicians, they were doers. And standing at the back, arms lightly crossed, was the man once mocked in this very room. Traoré wore the same fatigues, the same red beret, but the burden he carried was lighter now, not because it had disappeared, but because it was shared. He walked slowly to the window. Outside, children raced across the field that used to be a private parking lot. Their laughter floated upward. Dozens of kites filled the sky, made from the scraps of old mining banners, now hand-sewn into bright wings. Each kite bore a message. We are not poor. This land is ours. Don't sell what feeds you. One council member turned to him. Mr. President, she asked, do you think they'll ever come back? He didn't answer immediately. He kept watching the sky. Then he said, they can. A pause. But now they come on our terms. No one clapped. No one nodded. They didn't need to. Truth doesn't need applause. He stepped away from the window and joined the table. No head seat, no higher chair, just one more voice. Together, they reviewed the next steps, expanding health posts, building local trade hubs, safeguarding water tables. Nothing flashy, nothing overnight, but everything designed to last. That evening, as the sky darkened and the final kites dipped below roofs, a boy named Idrissa stood on a stool in the field. He stared up at his kite, stitched from a torn mining banner once draped over his school. On it, he'd drawn a sun, a tree, and a red line beneath. He held the string tight and whispered, "They took so much." Then he smiled. But they didn't take the sky. Behind him, his father, once a miner, now a cooperative leader, watched silently. The wind shifted. Above Ouagadougou, where smoke and sorrow once hovered, color now danced. It wasn't just a new chapter. It was a new country. And at last, the sky belonged to its people.